This week, Emmet and I return to Jack Kirby's original run on Kamandi, The Last Boy on Earth, as Kamandi visits Chicago, kind of, and Monster Lake. First, just a reminder that you can help this podcast by making your Amazon purchases via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon and make that your bookmark for future purchases. Deconstructing Comics earns a bit of money from your purchase that helps us keep the show going. We really appreciate your support. This is Tim.
This is Emmet.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Emmet in country Victoria.
Yay, you got there.
Doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Yeah. See any wildlife recently?
Oh, yes, of course. I mean, my wife received some plants today, and it seems like a giant spider piggybacked in with the plants. So that was a situation. All good now. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, well, I've seen pictures of those giant spiders. They're certainly giant. Like bigger than a chihuahua, I think.
Yeah, I mean some of the large ones that we get here, the huntsmen, like I would consider them large. An Irish person would consider them large. They're fine. They're like little puppy creatures. They just want to run around and do things. They're not that dangerous. But this one we did not recognize what it was, but it was big, and I was like, oh god, okay, get out of my house, get out of the house. Anyway, if you don't know what it is, get rid of it.
Well, and people have said before, in Australia, it seems like everything wants to kill you.
Everything wants to kill you.
Okay, so we're back with Kamandi, our third episode of Kamandi issues. And originally, my thought was that we should get through them in as few podcast episodes as possible, but doing 10 at a time was kind of unwieldy, and not only that, but it turned out that the series seems to be relatively popular. I mean, I'm getting actual feedback from listeners, so why not take our time with it? So this time we're just doing 5 issues, 19 to 23. And, we try to fit these, kind of find good cutoff points and group together issues that kind of make up one sort of arc. So, actually, though, I kind of felt like the first 2 of these 5 kind of fit together better with what we did last time.
Yeah, I see what you mean. But they are incredibly self-contained as issues. So, and then there was a sort of follow-on in terms of what the next segment, which you chose. I kept reading because I was curious to see. The momentum. We'll talk about it. I don't want to spoil anything. The momentum of these issues was great, and then I kept reading because I was thinking, "Oh, where's this going?" And it just, it takes a dip all of a sudden. We'll get to the next episode, but I was whatever. And you know what it is? It came down to that bugbear we raised with Etrigan, which is that Jack Kirby just doesn't seem to like magic. He just doesn't he doesn't seem to like the black arts gothic genre. Like once you introduce that element, he falls off. And the next story has this sort of gothic vibes, and it's strange that he went there because it's not a natural part of the setting. The setting is very much post-apocalyptic, evolutionary theory, mutants, all this kind of stuff, Pierre Boulle type stuff. It's completely lost in the next storyline. So I'm glad you cut it off when it did, because I think this is a lovely chunk of story we've got.
Yeah. Now, in these 5 issues, we do see some of Kirby's favorite topics. In 19 and 20, it's the mob. And we haven't really talked about it as we've been going through the Kirby DC stuff, but one of the things that he did for DC was a magazine, not a comic book, but a magazine called In the Days of the Mob. And only one issue ever actually came out at the time. A second issue was drawn, created, but not published until many years later in a collected edition together with the first issue. I have not seen it. It's not available digitally as far as I could tell. We would have to invest $45 US a piece in getting the hardcover of it if we wanted to talk about it. But anyway, in Kamandi, well, you can tell just as soon as you look at the cover of issue 19, Kamandi is on the hood of a 1920s car full of mobsters who are shooting at the guerrilla troops that we saw in the previous issue. And they're shooting at each other, and bullet almost hits Kamandi there in front of the car. So, yeah, we can see what direction this is going. I thought, that the figures, it's Kirby.
Yeah, what follows is a fascinating... we've had this a couple of times where Kamandi, the story will open with him in a completely alien situation, alien environment, strange characters, strange creatures. And it's that sort of throwing you into the action, but also that sense of dislocation, which I think is part of the Kamandi experience. Kamandi is the last boy on Earth. He winds up in a situation that's completely alien, and we as readers go along with him. It makes sense. With this one, I genuinely was taken in with it for a time, where I was going, is this like... I was trying to think of other examples of this. I was going, is this like that Star Trek episode? I made a note of it, A Piece of the Action, which was 1968. So that's 6 years before this was published. So I was thinking, is he riffing on that, like some culture that's just become obsessed with gangster culture? Turns out that's not what it is.
No.
In fact, another thing is potentially a referent here, which we'll get to. But like that mystery really sucked me in, and then he is trying to figure it out himself. Kamandi is trying to say, why is everyone behaving like this? Why are they acting this way? And yeah, it's very interesting. It's a really interesting approach.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure myself what was going on here. So in the last issue, Kamandi had stolen one of the guerrilla soldiers' vehicles, a kind of a tank, or they called it a rover when they saw it was stolen. And so he's still in the rover, and he's arrived at, kind of Chicago. And on the first page, he's being held at gunpoint by what appear to be some human mobsters who are saying, "Welcome to Chicago, sucker."
Which I'm given to understand is a traditional Chicago welcome.
Sure. So they have him get in their car, and they go into this tunnel, which is going into like a big dome. And so they get inside, and it looks like, this is 1920s Chicago. And Kamandi is kind of happy because, Chicago survived the Great Disaster, and there are actual other humans surviving who aren't idiots. At least not idiots in that way, not the animal level humans that he's been meeting. So he goes into there, and then meanwhile we see that the guerrillas have also arrived outside that dome in another one of their tanks, led by Sergeant Ugash.
They almost don't notice it, which is crazy. It's a giant dome, but they almost don't see it. Ugash has to actually direct them to go into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we know that they're still on Kamandi's trail. And Kamandi is now in what appears to be a 1920s Chicago nightclub with a flapper dancing in the foreground, and mobsters everywhere, and there's a jazz band playing the Dixieland Five.
It's great. I don't want us to pass out commenting on the title. The Last Gang in Chicago is an incredible title for a story. It's a great idea.
Well, it kind of echoes The Last Boy on Earth, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
What did you like about the title?
It's got a resonance to it. The Last Gang in Chicago, and it's quite loaded with meaning as well, because Chicago, in the popular American imagination, is this crime-ridden hellhole. It doesn't matter how much improved Chicago is. Like, there's always still that right-wing media epithet that Chicago's terrible. In fact, the more progressive it gets, the worse it is, apparently. But yeah, so it's synonymous with gang violence. That's always been sort of the tendency. So the last gang in Chicago sort of implies like an end of that era too, like that, or that this is the one aspect of Chicago that survived the post-apocalypse, which is a brilliant hook too. Like the one thing that we all make fun of Chicago for is the one thing that survived. They're the last gang of killers and murderers and thieves and gamblers, and they're all in this condensed dome environment, just living it up. They got flapper girls dancing on tables. It's great.
So, but there's this guy named Fingers, whose job it is to take Kamandi backstage and shoot him. But he insists that Kamandi should lunge for a gun that's within his reach there to fire back, and Kamandi's convinced that the gun must not be loaded, but Fingers insists, so Kamandi does pick it up, he fires, other guys come in, Kamandi apparently kills them all, and then he's really regretful.
Before we go, we need to note as well that as he shoots Fingers, he shouts, "You rat," which is quite in keeping with the period. So Kamandi's actually, he studied his gangster movies. He knows who he's talking.
Yeah, well, I mean, we keep getting these references to things that I'm like, how does Kamandi know that? Wow, I guess that was more of the stuff that he was watching when he was in the bunker. But, I mean, he really studied. He knows all this stuff from the past. So, yeah, he thinks he's killed them all, and he's sad that he is now a murderer, I guess. He says, that I got them all, I had to do it, there was no other way, I had to defend myself. And then they all come back to life. And now Kamandi doesn't know what's going on. And so then they're shooting at him again, and he crashes through a window and escapes.
It's a genuinely alarming moment.
Yeah.
Like, it's truly like the first time a person ever watches George Romero's Night of the Living Dead or something, where you killed them, they keep coming. Like they you can't put them down.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, when they also, again, like I was taken in by this. I was like, what's the mystery here? Why is this group of George Raft impersonators unkillable? What's going on?
So Kamandi's outside, and now he runs smack into Ugash and the other apes. And so they capture him. They tie his arms behind his back. But then some mobsters show up and throw a grenade, which kind of throws everything into chaos. And there are more mobsters in a car shooting at everybody. So it's kind of the cover scene. And then another guy with a kind of straw hat. His name is Gentleman George. He calls Kamandi and unties him and takes him to this gambling club. And Kamandi is thinking to himself how everything feels like a prepared scenario from old gang movies. That's a clue.
Yeah, that's a clue. That's when we start. And then it's funny looking back on this, knowing what happens next, because all the events start to line up a bit, like why Kamandi was brought backstage, and there was that offer of, in effect, a duel. Like, it starts to, I see what this is, and yeah, I like the idea that the gambler den is like the more relaxed alternative to the violence. Well, you can chill in the gambling den. That's we'll get to it though.
Yeah. So Kamandi's trying to get them interested in fighting the apes. And they're all kind of skeptical of it at first. Yeah, Chicago's full of gorillas, one guy says. But finally he just kind of antagonizes them, grabs the guy's cigar out of his mouth. And, well, Gentleman George says that he saw the gorillas himself, so he talks them into going outside and fighting the gorillas.
Yeah, so, and again, as we go through the next issue, we will find out a little bit more about what's going on. This scene makes less sense in relation to that, unless events outside have escalated to the point where, okay, they all agree. But like once we learn what's happening here, the individuality of these characters makes less sense. You know, it feels like they're, or unless we're talking about, well, yeah, I'm a little baffled. Some of it scans, some of it doesn't. Some of it is just, let's have Kamandi being unnecessarily aggressive with a bunch of people who are friendly to him yet again. I really expected he had another move in his back pocket after he grabbed that guy's cigar. I thought he was going to do something with it, but no, he just grabbed the guy's cigar and he almost got shot in the face for his trouble. I was like, you need to have a follow-up, man. Like, you need to have something ready.
Yeah, and then what are you going to do when the guy pulls a gun on you?
He's just, okay, and then Gentleman George spoke up, and thank God he did, but like, what was his move? I don't know.
And I should mention that the reason Kamandi was trying to get them to fight was because, you know, he believes that these are fellow intelligent humans. And, you know, as we see again and again in this series, he really feels like humans should be on top the way it used to be. And the guerrillas are going to take the town, take everybody's freedom, take his freedom. So we've got to fight for our freedom as humans against these animals who are, you know, out of their normal place. Things are out of whack in this world, and he wants them back the way they were.
The note I made was the quote, "I must make these jerks get up and fight." And I've put after that, mission statement for Kamandi as a whole. Like, that's the entire point. As you say, he wants things back the way they were. That's what he's trying to do.
So they do go out and fight. So we've got a few pages of gunfight in the streets.
Pretty violent. It's very, very aggressive.
Yeah, and a car gets blown up.
Yeah, you're seeing guys getting shot, guys getting punched around the face, you know, that's pretty full on. And then, you know, the last page surprise is what's being set up here. This is escalation of violence, which is quite graphic because you're seeing guerrillas and men kill each other in the street. And then, well, that's all set up for the reveal.
Yeah, so Ugash is there, and Kamandi sees him shoot one of the mobsters and says, You killed him. Ugash, you still got me to reckon with. And he said, I'll finish you off too. And as they're struggling with a gun, the gangster gets back up and pulls a gun on them, and they see that his face is broken away and there's like electronics inside. And my first thought was, Kirby not only preceded Star Wars, he preceded the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman and the fembots, who also had a tendency for their faces to fall off and show gears inside.
Well, because of the Star Trek connection, my mind immediately went to Terminator, which famously was sued by Harlan Ellison, who wrote the most famous episode of Star Trek. Ellison claimed that James Cameron had ripped off his Star Trek script for the Terminator. So I was thinking the Terminator. But the year before this comic was published, Westworld was in the cinemas. And Westworld has the famous bit where Yul Brynner's face lifts up and we see all the circuitry in the head case for the robot. And the ultimate reveal of the storyline is it's Westworld, but it's gangsters.
Okay.
Like it's an amusement park where you can die because the software is just running on a loop and it's not actually holding back anymore. It's letting the robots kill. So the fact that Kamandi got kidnapped at the beginning of the issue and pulled in under the dome, I was like, this amusement park's aggressively decided to take him. But he got shot in the arm. Like, he got actually injured. So there was live ammunition that they were firing. Whereas presumably, if this was an amusement park, it wouldn't be. It would be like the original concept of Westworld, the Michael Crichton novel and the film, is that the robots pretend to shoot you. And then Yul Brynner's robot stops pretending. Okay,
so the fembots have multiple predecessors then. Do you ever watch those shows, $6 Million Man?
I did as a kid, but like I wouldn't have spotted that reference. And then of course Austin Powers has lapped $6 Million Man in terms of the fembots, because he also uses the fembots. Michael Myers also uses the fembots in that. So yeah, no, that's a good pull. I didn't think of that one.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, in my lore with my brother Paul, the fembots are kind of something that we referred to often because I said, there was always a scene where somebody's face fell off. The fembots were on in several different storylines, and always somebody's face would fall off, or at least one robot's face would fall off, and I called it the face fall off free for all, and that became one of our catchphrases.
That's cute.
So his face is broken away, and now the next issue box, what's going on in old Chicago? It'll send you screaming. Next, the electric chair. Yeah, he's always talking about how you're going to be shocked to the core by what's going to happen next.
It's a very literal pun this time.
Yeah. So the cover of issue 20 kind of gives the game away, I think. Kamandi, we see his back as he's walking out towards the blasted out wall of somewhere, and there's a computer there saying, "You are leaving Chicago. Come again, come again, come again."
I can only imagine that Jack Kirby really hated Disneyland, because with this and that Forever People issue where they had the Apocalypse Run Disneyland knockoff, I think he saw the use of animatronics and this sort of self-contained amusement park synecdoche, of life. He was just against it. He was just like, nope, this is bad. You're giving too much control to this corporative entity, Disney. I feel like there's a germ of that in this storyline as well, when we find out it's a deadly amusement park.
So Kirby must never have gone to Showbiz Pizza either, or Chuck E. Cheese. You wouldn't find him in those places.
Well, one of the previous interviewees for Deconstructed Comics, Jamie Loftus, she's obsessed with the Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. She's talked about it in multiple podcasts. She was hunting them down. She was looking to actually purchase one. So that my entire knowledge of Chuck E. Cheese and the animatronic animals and the performances comes from Jamie Loftus' podcast appearances, because I would not know any about that. That at all. So I've got no frame of reference for that.
I've heard a different podcast about it, and also recently John Oliver did a straight to YouTube half hour on Chuck E. Cheese. So how was it? So in my town in Iowa, in the 80s, we had a Showbiz Pizza, which was, similar. At some point, Showbiz bought Chuck E. Cheese, but the person who owned the rights to the characters at Showbiz wouldn't let them use those characters anymore. So even though Showbiz became the owner, they ended up using the Chuck E. Cheese characters in all of their restaurants after that merger. So Showbiz kind of went away after that. Anyway, getting back to Kamandi. I want to see Kamandi happen across a Showbiz Pizza. That would make me happy.
I feel there's a college dissertation here. It's just tantalizingly out of reach.
Ugash and Kamandi are arrested by presumably robot cops. 1920s cops, of course, the old-style police uniforms. And they're put in a jail cell with someone who also is another robot.
We can't skip past the second page, splash page. It's incredible. Following on from the end of the previous issue with the Gentleman George's reveal of being a robot, we have this amazing foregrounded image of the face is even more peeled off now. He's got a Tommy gun in one hand,
pieces breaking off
towards
of it.
The reader. Yeah. Kamandi's yelling while being restrained. That's the man you want. They're focused on him for some reason. He's not putting two and two together as to what's going on here yet. But that detail on this creature, this robotic man with the face peeled off, and yeah, that's why I went to the Terminator, because they had that same sort of graphic fleshiness and metallic quality to this. But it's an incredible splash page. Such a beautiful piece. Yeah. I would frame this and put it on the wall. I think it's gorgeous.
Sure. Yeah, and the credits are on a stack of newspapers.
I know. I love that detail. It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a really striking image. I mean, these double page splashes that Kirby was doing at DC are often really good, but yeah, this is I think this is especially striking because the figure is so large. You know, it's so zoomed in. Some of the others have been these big panoramic views of some place, but this is more of a close-up shot.
I love the detail as well. You can see that the jacket and the shirt collar has bullet holes in it. It's been riddled with bullets, but it's still going. You know? Everything about it's great.
Yeah, so Kamandi and Ugash are in jail. Their cellmate is a robot again. They bust him up and they escape. And so they're wandering around in this police station and realizing, so they see a lot of these figures, but they're not moving. And so they're starting to realize what's going on here. Then they come across this courtroom where suddenly all the figures start moving. It's just like walking into a Showbiz Pizza that's just opening for the day. It's the same thing, except that in this case they're sentencing you to death. Slight difference.
I feel like what's happening here, and this is where I was confused about the previous issue with the gamblers taking so long to get on board. I think what's happening here is whether the machine intelligence that's controlling all the different animatronics has encountered something in the loop that's literally throwing it for a loop. This is like Kamandi and you guys are just smashing through things, breaking open jails, destroying their cellmate, you know. So it's almost like the machine intelligence is taking a moment to go, all right, what do I do? And it's coming up with another storyline, and that's the courtroom scene. It's the courtroom scene sort of then emerges around them. And so, all right, we're just going to execute you now. But I feel it's interesting because I couldn't quite... Kamandi comments on the fact that all the people he's encountering are playing roles. Because they're literally running lines. That's what they're doing. They've got this software that's just they're running off. And then it's like everyone freezes because it's like, we need a new narrative. And that's what we then encounter, where Ugash and Kamandi basically get handled and taken out to an execution chamber. But yeah, it's a really bizarre, off-putting moment where they're walking past all these people. They're not moving. They're so lifelike. Yeah, I think it's just really weird. This is a deeply weird storyline. There's the moments of pure weirdness here, which I think is very tantalizing.
I also thought it was interesting that even though, you know, Kamandi says at one point, Ugash is no friend of mine, but at the same time, because they're together in this weird situation, they do off and on work together, and Kamandi works to save Ugash's life here when he's strapped into an electric chair.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot in our New Gods conversations, because what is Kirby's great theme? It's the idea of the machine intelligence or humanity giving too much control over to machines being the death of us all. Like, that's the thing we need to avoid. We need to avoid ceding human agency to artificial intelligence, to machines, to sort of convenience technology, all these things that kept getting touched on in the New Gods storylines. And I think what we're seeing here is, well, the two living beings in this Chicago theme park and dome, well, we're the last two living beings. We need to survive this, even though I hate you. So, you know, I kind of figure, I get where he's coming from.
So what Kamandi does is he gets the attention of the other apes out in the street who are looking for Ugash. He fires some shots so that they'll come running. And they arrive just in time, just as the cop is pulling the switch to activate the electric chair. And so once the gorillas get there, then Kamandi makes tracks. And he ends up in what my brother and his friends once at Disneyland called Backstage Land, where it doesn't look like the 1920s anymore. He sees someone, possibly also a robot, driving around in a car with broken robots in it, labeled repairs. And he figures out, he sees all these big computers, and of course it's the 70s, so computers are, filling rooms still. One computer. But he realizes, Kamandi had this hope all along that, humans still survived someplace in their rightful place in his idea, but there aren't any humans running this place. It's all being run by a computer. So he's really disappointed here at the end.
Yeah, it's quite heartfelt. The computers, they're talking to themselves. It can't be. It can't be the computers. Can't be running the city on their own.
Yeah.
There's got to be human beings here. And then he has a massive breakdown. Where are you? If there are men here, show yourselves. He's waiting for the Great Oz to step from behind a curtain.
And the computer says, "We are in charge. Leave or be eliminated."
Yeah, which is Dalek-esque. If you're familiar with Doctor Who,
exterminated.
Yeah, and then we've got the hint of that sort of apocalyptic iconography in the hallway when he's running along the floor. There's those strange, looks a bit like the symbology we see with some of the new gods and apocalyptic characters. I did note that the vehicle being driven to the repair shop for these androids had an M logo on it.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't pick up what that could be in reference to. Again, my assumption immediately was Disney. At the time, was Disney strongly associated with D? I still think it was the florid signature Disney. I never thought it was a single letter. So the other
I have no idea about the M.
Yeah, it could be like Metron. If we want to make a long connection with this idea of intelligence above all else. Above all consideration for humanity or life, it's just about knowing things, and that's what we have here. We've got this unleashed machine intelligence. I don't know, but I thought it was interesting that he included a logo.
Yeah, that is interesting. And looking at the final page, we see the outside of this building that says, "You are leaving Chicagoland, the fully automated living museum." But yeah, there's no clue there as to what that M might have stood for.
Or is it just very simply museum?
Could be.
Yeah, maybe that's just what it is. I don't know. It just take the obvious answer. It's not Metron, guys. Different continuity. But yeah, no. I thought it was just an interesting little detail to throw in there.
Well, I think all of these characters ended up incorporated into the DCU, so they could cross paths theoretically.
Yes, now they can.
Coming up, Monster Lake, including something a little bit kinky but ultimately tragic. But first, a reminder to join us for 20th Century TV and music trivia quiz videos and more on our Patreon page. Every month, patrons donating $4 a month or more also get a full-length podcast episode reviewing an issue of The Amazing Spider-Man from the 1960s. Check out all our rewards at patreon.com/deconcomics. If you'd rather give a one-time donation, you can do so via PayPal by sending it to mail@deconstructingcomics.com. We appreciate your support. Edward and Alphonse Elric, as a result of attempting the forbidden act of resurrecting their mother with alchemy, have paid the price. Edward lost an arm and a leg. Alphonse lost his whole body, his soul now attached to a suit of armor. Together they search for a way to make their bodies complete again and uncover a deadly plot by their country's military rulers. That's the concept of Hiromu Arakawa's Fullmetal Alchemist, one of the best manga ever made. Tim and Patrick are rereading Arakawa's masterwork in search of interesting sound effects, translation errors, goofy humor, and, oh yeah, a great story. The podcast is The Law of Equivalent Exchange, a chapter-by-chapter look at the manga Fullmetal Alchemist. New episodes every other Monday, wherever podcasts are found. What are you willing to exchange? Okay, so at this point, we finished Volume 1 of Kamandi, and there never was a Volume 2 collected, so we had to resort to individual digital issues. So, issue 21, on the cover, Kamandi is being pursued by a giant crab, which does happen in the issue.
Again, like with the opening of the issue, we have that same approach to Kamandi's story I mentioned before, which is Kamandi's in a completely strange and unusual situation, and we have a masked armored figure, fighting against these other creatures, and they all have like secondary color, like purple, green armor. So the assumption is villain, because villains always have secondary colors, not primary colors. And did we find out who the antagonists are with the spears? Did we find out what they were? They're just it's monster. It's the monster area. So there's like, but they're another species.
I guess.
Are they clam people? I think they're clam people.
Well, I don't know. We got these. Okay, so. As the end of the last issue we didn't mention, it points out that we're going to be seeing Monster Lake in this issue, which is a huge body of water where it used to be the Great Lakes before the Great Disaster. So, and of course Chicago is on the shore of it. So that leads Kamandi to go into the area of Monster Lake. Over the next 3+ issues. So, yeah, he sees this guy in purple and green with a gold helmet who is fighting off these armored figures. I don't know, their dress is vaguely samurai-ish to me. But I don't think we ever do find out who is in there. I mean, in Kamandi, again and again, we start out with these figures and we can't see their faces, and then their face is revealed and there's some kind of animal. But in this case, we never do find out who these people are. They're in some kind of green balloonish looking thing. But when this other figure chases them off, then that thing sinks into the lake. So, and Kamandi says it must be a type of diving bell. Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned that about the continuing revealing of the figure beneath the mask, because we have that again here, but in this instance it's not an animal, it's a person.
Yeah, so this armored figure who fought them off is called Ahab, and he is a human who is, more or less a human of this world. He's not super intelligent, but he's trained. And whoever is training him is in this kind of armored pod thing, and we can't see, we can't see who is speaking in there, the nature of this being.
You're right. Immediate reversal to type here.
And it turns out that it's a dolphin.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, again and again, we're made to wait to find out who's speaking or who is fighting in the scene. It takes a little while before he tells us the dolphin's name. I think that might later on in this issue, it's revealed. Inspector Zeel, Zeel.
Yeah, and they Kamandi almost immediately tries to part ways with him because he's disgusted by, again, he feels like the evolved creatures on Earth, whenever they do have what would be considered friendly relationship with a human type, Homo sapien, they immediately enslave them, or turn them into a tool, or turn them into a pet. And that's exactly what he believes is happening here between Zeel and Ahab. And he comments, no dolphin's going to whip me into line. I'm not an ignorant clunk. like that Ahab, and yeah, he's so offended constantly by the status of humanity. I know it's a point we keep repeating, but the fact that he's encountered a non-hostile creature, Inspector Zeal, and who offers him safe passage, or sharing their abilities, and he immediately turns him down. Says, "Nope,
Yeah,
I'll make my own way," and immediately goes wrong.
yeah. Well, I mean, as soon as he says goodbye, then that giant crab appears, and Ahab saves Kamandi, and then Kamandi's like, "Well, yeah, I guess I better stick with other people." It's safety in numbers. I was curious about why Kirby decided to call this character Ahab. Of course, a Moby Dick reference, but I mean, is it kind of an irony because, like, rather than fighting a cetacean, he's working for a cetacean?
Yeah. Ahab spent his professional life murdering these beautiful creatures and scooping out their brain jelly. We later get a pun on the level of Brigadoon, which I will never get over. I think it's an incredible pun. Brigadoon's amazing, but we get Moby Death, almost as good. So it's clearly on his mind, the Ahab of it all. But I think it was, Ahab was, his conceit was that he could kill Moby Dick, and that he was going to do it, and that the sea was his domain. And Moby Dick basically is like, "Oh, okay, your hubris is coming nigh. I will murder you and everyone you love." Here, Ahab serves these creatures and is a servant of them, and will risk his life for them. So I think it's just that reversal that Kirby's interested in.
Mm-hmm. So they're getting close to the Dominion of Devils, which used to be Canada, and for some reason... I'm sorry?
Poor Canada.
For some reason, there's a radioactive barrier that seems to be right along what was the U.S.-Canadian border. Of course, the Devils are giant insects like Click-Clack, who we saw previously. Now, also... Kamandi sees these walking plants. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, traveler roots, we're told.
Yeah, who actually have, like, legs and they're crawling along.
Yeah, so these are all, like, mutated species, again, but they're directly attributed to the radiation of the region. It's not like the other animals that have become humanoid, where it's not necessarily radiation, it's evolution, it's a combination of different things, potentially a consciousness raising gas, as we learned previously. So there's all these other factors involved in what's happened to the other species, but these are directly attributed to radiation. We're back to your science fiction disaster movies in the 1950s with the giant ant, they and the like. That's what's happened to Canada. Canada got, 1950s movied.
Yeah, and they walk by a pit that's full of bones, and Zeal says, "Keep moving. You won't want to meet the thing that left them there." And they encounter some giant frogs, and then it turns out that these frogs are kind of being herded by some primitive-type humans. And so they get into a fight with these kind of cavemen. And then a giant insect breaks through the radioactive barrier, and that scares the cavemen away. Kamandi jumps into a deep ditch, and he takes a hard fall in it. And so Zeal's been talking about, we're trying to get to a place called Seaway. And Kamandi says, "It was all for nothing. We'll never make Seaway now." And right behind him, there's a pipe that says Seaway on it.
It's so funny. It's so funny. I was looking at that and going, "Is that that's deliberate? That's a deliberate choice." But sure. the sort of the dismay of Kamandi is very funny because it's like, it's behind you. It's pantomime-esque.
And the next issue box promises, "Everything happens now. Shocks, surprises, and this will kill you. The Red Baron." No Snoopy, just the Red Baron.
folks, it is surprising. There's some surprising stuff in this issue. Can I share the slogan for the next issue?
Sure.
So the top of the cover, it says, "Dolphins kept all men in tanks. One man kept all dolphins in fear, the Red Baron." Now, as a pull line for an issue, who's that working on? Who's that? Like, I'm intrigued because I'd be reading the story and I'm curious to see where this goes. But like, say kid walks in off the street to the comic book store, sees this very action-packed cover, and then reads the pull line, "Dolphins kept all men in tanks, one man kept all dolphins in fear, the Red Baron." That's weird. That's a weird... that doesn't mean anything to anybody, you know. Kamandi, the last boy on Earth, that's a good one. That's great. But that's wasted real estate just above.
So, yeah, and we see the Red Baron shooting projectiles at some dolphins, and Kamandi and Ben Boxer are looking out through a window. They're under the water.
Spoiler, Ben Boxer's back.
Right, yeah, it's also kind of spoiled for us on the cover. And, yeah, by the way, we hadn't seen Ben and the others in 11 issues. And, yeah, they resurface in this one. Issue 22 opens with Kamandi and the giant radioactive insect, and it's apparently after Kamandi. And then we have a reverse shot, and we see there's this big complex of buildings and a bunch of guys all in white, including covering their faces, of course. And they grab Kamandi and pull him into a lead-shielded vehicle that says Seaway Radiation Squad on it. And they kill the insect. Well, the insect was kind of dying anyway from going through the barrier. And then it turns out that 3 of these guys are Ben Boxer and Steve and Renzi. We never do find out who the other guys are. There are a lot more than 3 guys here, but
I think the implication is that they're all of the other people who've been trained in simple tasks. So they're just warding the area, I guess. But Boxer and friends have like met the dolphins and are helping out, I guess. For all I know, they've been providing some additional instruction, you know, because the dolphins trust them.
Yeah, well, I guess if I understood correctly, the reason that they didn't drown back in issue 11 was because the dolphins saved them.
Got it. Yeah, that was a loose end. I just assume they're going to turn up again now.
Well, yeah, they keep showing up again and again. But yeah, when Kamandi asked about it, "I thought you drowned that day we fell into the sea." Ben says, "It seems that Lady Luck loves us all. The dolphins found us." But how? And yeah, Kamandi, dolphins, I forgot.
I think he was about to ask, but how did you get here? I think that's kind of what we were leading to there. But
okay. Yeah, because they're far away from where they last saw each other down in Florida. Somehow Kamandi's made it all the way from south to north across what was the U.S. And so some of these other white-suited guys are burying the radioactive insect. And then they see Zeal and Ahab kind of laid out on the ground, and the white-suited guys go and help them. And they put Zeal into some water. Now, he is a mammal, so he does need to breathe. I mean, completely submerging him in water, I wasn't sure if that was such a good idea, but
he's working according to Aquaboy rules. He can be outside for so long, and then you have to get him in a body of water.
Yeah, so this, as the cover mentioned, the humans are in a tank then, and they can look out a window and talk with the dolphins outside. The dolphins are talking into these like big red square microphones.
And if I had my way, Tim, at this point in the podcast, we would start editing in And a little sexy soundtrack. Because what's about to unfold is maybe the most disturbing and yet strangely erotic encounter of Kamandi's young life.
Tila. Yeah, who is a female dolphin who takes a liking to Kamandi. And I don't know, I think it's from reading all this Kirby DC stuff. As soon as she was introduced, I said, she's going to die.
Yeah.
I just knew it. My spidey sense was tingling.
But it's like, she's not like Flower and the other one, Spirit, wasn't it? Because they were so submissive to Kamandi. They were like, oh, me so dumb. It was pretty offensive. And then Tila's like well able for him. Oh, you're hot. I like you. I was like, oh my God, Tila. Ooh. And my note here was, and 1,000 fetishes were launched. It's like the next level of furry, whatever that is, whatever the cetacean version of that is. But yeah, I just Kirby's just up for it. It's like, yeah, that dolphin's got the hots for you, Kamandi. What are you going to do about it? I don't know. It's a bit weird. And she's so nice about it all.
Now, then I thought this was kind of creepy. So after Kamandi initially meets Tila, then Ben and the other guys, they're referred to as the mutants sometimes. They feed Kamandi, and then it turns out that they've drugged his food and put him to sleep. And because they want to spray him with decontamination spray. Now, Zeal is also sprayed, but he's awake. He knows what's going on. I didn't understand why they couldn't just tell Kamandi this. Why did they have to knock him out without even telling him what they were doing?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, yeah, we've met this kid before. Yeah, if you're at all nice to him, he'll run away immediately and accuse you of being a dictator. So you got to knock him unconscious. Yeah, it's creepy. I thought something else was happening here. I was afraid that it was going to be because the previous issue, when Kamandi got beneath Chicago, my note was, oh, this is like Jordan Peele's movie Us, which I know you don't like horror movies, but there's a reveal about like a place beneath a place, and it I don't want to get further into it because it's a massive spoiler. But the previous Jordan Peele movie was Get Out. Mm-hmm. And in that movie, a character is knocked unconscious and a procedure is going to be done on that character. And again, I don't want to spoil anything for people who haven't seen Get Out. Very, very popular film. I'm sure most people listening have. I thought that's what was happening here. I thought that there was a transplant of some kind about to be done to Zeal's benefit for whatever that was. Yeah. Or a lobotomy on Kamandi to make him more pliable as what do they call them? A squire? They call them squires.
Yeah, humans who serve dolphins. Yeah, squires.
That's what I thought was happening here. And that boxer and his friends were just like, yeah, cool, we'll rip out a part of his brain or remove his brain or whatever was happening. But no, it's decontamination. You're right. It's completely unnecessary. Yeah. It's just Jack Kirby's attempt from beyond the grave to kill my liver. That's what this is.
Yeah, again, so I was going to ask, does this count in the Kamandi drinking game?
He's not knocked out with violence.
Yeah, he's not hit on the head. He's given tranquilizers. Roofied, so, yeah.
Which I didn't know was going to be a thing in this series.
So, yeah, are you supposed to drink in this case, or because it's not violently administered that it doesn't count?
Yeah, they're not actively wishing him harm and giving him a crushed skull. They've slipped something into his food so that they can decontaminate him from radiation without any risk of him running out the door or something. I guess is what they're doing. I'm not,
Yeah, and he never does find out. He never does realize it, and I don't know if he would have even minded if he did know, but whatever. And so then we jump ahead to the next day, and Kamandi and Ben are in some kind of an underwater vehicle driving around, and they run into Tila again.
There's a bit of flirting happening here.
Yeah. And they get to Seaway. It's this underground city, and all the buildings are labeled so you can see what they are. Historical information, military personnel only, theater, social contacts, food stores, and so on.
But they're all shipping containers.
Mm-hmm.
From, like where people have transported food and goods and across the sea lanes. So all those have sunk, I assume, and the dolphins have retrofitted them into these knowledge bases. It's fascinating, actually. Particularly now because we've seen more and more of this phenomenon of people actually creating houses out of shipping containers. That's becoming more of a going concern in these post-capitalist times. And I find it fascinating that like Kirby again was ahead of the curve here and had the dolphins do it underwater.
So Ben points out that what's going on here is just a continuation of the special relationship between humans and dolphins, except reversed, where the humans are serving the dolphins rather than the dolphins serving the humans. And I was thinking, and I thought about it more again in the next batch that we read, because I read to number 25, actually. I think Kirby was trying to think of all the different ways that humans and animals interact and trying to work those into this. So
that's interesting. Yeah, because the reveal of the villain in the next storyline sort of lands on that too. I think our relationship with animals is a fascinating topic for study. Peter Singer has written about this a lot. He's an Australian philosopher / academic. He's written about how we think of our animals in our lives. Since becoming a pet owner, I've evolved a very codependent relationship with my cat, and that was a surprise to me, because I always thought that cat people were ridiculous. I understand the idea of companionship, but I was like, oh, you talk about your cat a little bit too much. And now it's like my every other conversation. My phone, what pictures on my phone, Tim? Lots of pictures of my cat. And
lock screen?
There is that. Oh, yeah, exactly. And it's a reciprocal relationship of some kind. I know there's people out there who poo-poo that, saying no, there's no relationship there at all. They just rely on you for food, and they will hang around because you've got food. But there seems to be some sort of communication, I've noticed. There seems to be some sort of back and forth. And people have commented on dolphins approaching humans in bodies of water. There's been stories of people being rescued by dolphins, but people being approached by dolphins, and there seems to be an interest that they take in people. Like, what are you doing here? Like, what are you up to? There's a sort of intelligence there. The assumption is because they've got large heads, they've got large brains, they're on a sort of level with us somewhere. So I think he's sort of extrapolating from that. It's of the humans that the dolphins have squired being effectively intelligent pets. And how do we treat dolphins? We get them to do tricks. Like we have them jump through hoops, we have them, perform in circus shows and so forth, SeaWorld and the like. And I think that's what he's observing here. And again, like Kamandi has a problem with that because it's anti-freedom.
Yeah.
Again. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Kamandi and Ben see some other humans who are being trained to sword fight by watching old movies. Ben says ancient movies. You can see a screen there, like a huge TV, imported from the 2000s. I assume
it's like Captain Blood or something that they're doing.
Yeah, it's like two pirates having a sword fight, and these humans are in the room fighting. And again, Kamandi is kind of offended by that. Look at the dummies taking orders like trained animals. And then Tila shows up again outside in the water, and he says, "It's you again. It seems I've caught your fancy." She says, "I must confess it's true. I've been to the civic administration office. I've got a permit to," unnecessary quotation marks, "permit to make you my squire." Kamandi says, "Ulp."
Ulp. That's amazing.
And he's angry because he doesn't want to be subservient to some animal. And so she sees that he is thinking that the relationship is a master and servant thing. And she says, it's not what you think. We're not masters. We're partners. And then... here comes some spears straight into Tila. She's done for. It didn't even take an issue for my prediction to come true.
It's so weird and kind of kinky and strange. But I was sad to see Tila die, actually.
I thought, gee, Jack, let us stick around with her for a while anyway.
Yeah, she comes back as a cyborg or something, it's very, very sad.
Yeah, and of course the spears were launched by the Red Baron, who is also, of course we can't see his face, but he's said to be a human who was trained by killer whales to hunt dolphins. And he's on some kind of motorized vehicle with a device that shoots spears. So he's attacking attacking Seaway. And now that Tila is gone, Kamandi's going to fight, and Ben says, it's not your fight, Kamandi, but Kamandi says, I'm Tila's squire, aren't I? So, now he's, in her memory, he's going to fight for her. Okay, so our last issue of this segment of our Kamandi talk, issue 23.
Again, we've got this terrible poll quote. Men have killed for fish before, but these men were trained by them. What men? Because the cover image is a giant talking killer whale attacking Kamandi on a piece of driftwood, which is very Moby Dick. But this killer whale is shouting, "Die, bungling gnat, you cost me a victory," which it turns out is a spoiler.
Yeah, a lot of these covers are spoilers.
Yeah.
20 again, was, 22 was,
Yeah, this is like Ishmael floating on Queequeg's coffin at the end of Moby Dick, in terms of that association. But it's weird, man. It's a weird, this storyline. I actually found issue 23 something of an anticlimax, and it just sort of fritters away all that energy that we've had with the conclusion. And the death of Tila really is this sort of climax of the storyline, and then everything after that is just downhill from there,
which is kind of odd, considering that the death of Tila is also the first time we see the villain of this segment,
who is a non-entity.
Yeah,
who's completely a non-entity.
He's kind of like Malekith in the second Thor movie, just kind of there.
They cut Christopher Eccleston scenes. But yeah, I feel it's bizarre, because then we have this. Well, it's kind of interesting that he's a non-entity, really, because we've got this killer whale, talking killer whale on the cover, who is introduced at first as a voice on a transceiver, talking to the Red Baron, saying, "Come back, you stop your raid." So I find it interesting that the Red Baron has no personality, because he isn't really a person. He's a tool. He's a weapon that's been sent by this killer whale to murder dolphins and disrupt their society.
Right. And he's just a puppet, really. He's not evil himself. He's controlled by evil people, or evil killer whales.
Yeah. And Kamandi and Baxter and Renzi and the other one, the only intelligent humans are for any distance around, and they sort of, they're the exception. All the other men we see in these issues, and they're all men, are explicitly shown to be just like the automatons from Chicago. They're conditioned to behave in a certain way. Even Ahab just does what he's told.
Yeah.
Anyway, that seems to be what's going on there. I've come around.
So, yeah, this issue, I could feel the influence of Kirby's war experience. Because this is a war between the dolphins and the Red Baron. And there are specific mentions of it. There's even like a panel of triage going on with a lot of bodies lying around, and yeah, I could just feel like change the setting and it's World War II or whichever war you want to mention.
Yeah, and there's lots of dolphin slaughter.
Right? Yeah, it's mostly dolphin. Well, they're humans dying too, apparently. The squires, but. And so the way that they do this is we see Kamandi on the first page water skiing pulled by two dolphins, and they're going towards the Red Baron and trying to shoot at him, missing. And then the Red Baron gets behind Kamandi and shoots spears and takes out both of his dolphins. And then Kamandi's floating in the water again. Now, is apparently unconscious here. Now, not knocked on the head, I guess, but from almost drowning, I guess.
Yeah, I will mime the taking of a drink. I do not have a drink on me at the moment. But yeah, this would fit the criteria as I've slavishly laid out before.
Okay, all right, drink.
Yeah, he's knocked unconscious by this attack. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. The Red Baron is chased away by someone else, and I guess it's the mutants in that boat, and so they take Kamandi back to the tank. Yeah, we see there's that triage scene on page 9. Somebody's saying, I think some oxygen can still save this one, and it's all humans. It's not dolphins.
Yeah, but like we see that there are dolphins calling for help because they could speak. So the dolphins are saying, we've been ambushed, Red Baron is cutting us down, Mayday, send help,
Yeah.
I just rewatched that terrible, terrible Bruce Willis movie, Hudson Hawk, which has repeated scenes where Andy McDowell impersonates a dolphin. Repeated scenes, apparently the height of comedy. These are tragic. They're being murdered.
And Kamandi finds that Ahab has been killed, and we get a couple panels, especially 3 panels spent on that, and kind of eulogizing this character.
And his bond with Inspector C, who's coming to check on him. But yeah, they're saying, he's going to be brokenhearted over this. This is a clear bond that they had.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess actually it's more like a couple pages spent on Ahab's death here, including telling Zeal about it. And so now the mutants decide they're, a bit belatedly, that they'll change to their steel forms and go out and fight the Red Baron.
Yeah, I kind of feel with these guys, it's like, that's your first move.
Yeah.
just get out the special abilities straight away,
Yeah, exactly. And Kamandi demands to be included. They try to discourage him, but he's going to help them. So he's in a boat, nearly blasted by the Red Baron, and then one of the mutants jumps him with a live mine in his hand, and it explodes. And so now again, the mutants are seemingly lost. They're going to come back. They never die, but. Yeah, and here's chapter 4, Moby Death.
Amazing. So cool. Oh.
And,
Put that on a t-shirt.
So, yeah.
That should be the cover. The cover should be the same image, but emblazoned over it, Moby Death. That's the cover. Put
that would work. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Kamandi is floating around in this boat on rough seas, and he's wishing that the mutants would show up so that he could get out of there. And, yeah, then the killer whale of the cover shows up, angry because they've destroyed the Red Baron. He said, he was the perfect fighting machine, and you little gnats destroyed him. And he smashes the boat to pieces. And the killer whale says, "You pygmy, the Red Baron was priceless. And Kamandi kind of swimming in the water, just his hands and his head sticking out. Says, then why did you risk him in war, stupid? War always has a price tag. It was your hate, your war. That's what your precious Red Baron paid for. And the whale says, why, you, Kamandi, the cost was high for us too, much too high. And the whale goes away, and the caption says, sometimes when the words are right and raw courage is obvious, even death will turn aside. The end.
I feel like you're right in terms of Kirby's war experience being a factor here, but this feels like the idea of if you could just get the generals and then just shout at them for an hour, all this needless slaughter wouldn't have happened. And he's borrowed the sort of symbolic figure of the weighty metaphorical figure of Moby Dick, and he's like, this is the engine of war, the sort of impulse to war that sacrifices lives and has no consciousness about them and doesn't care at all, and it's just like considering its own investment in the war and its potential profits from the war. Like explicitly, the creature talks about priceless, like it's talking about what it's invested in training this soldier, this Red Baron. So I think that's what this is all about. It's this very interesting metaphor, and people like to talk about what does Moby Dick symbolize, and Kirby's going, it's the fucking war.
All right, well, only 5 issues, and it took us over an hour to talk about them, so just freed us up to talk about it more.
They were amazing. Chicago is incredible. Like, Chicago is just such a strange, eerie sequence of moments, like incredible art, like just beautiful, beautiful sequence. The Dolphins storyline is very, very interesting, and it's just got that weird kinkiness to it because of Tila. But as I said, it feels like it sort of drifts off, and it reminds me. I was just thinking about it because we had that issue of Orion that we talked about too, where you had the father and the son, and the father was ashamed that his son was a pacifist, and then they basically yelled at a metaphor for war, and then one of them died, and that, like, it's weird that both of them are waterlogged, like impassioned pleas for non-violence in the war, and they don't quite work. Like this, there is something damp about them. I don't understand why we're using this scenario. He's repeated himself here. So it's a strange one. I don't find it's as successful, but like up until Tila's death, I was like, this is going places. I don't know where this is going. This is incredible.
Yeah, I think Tila's death stops the momentum.
Yeah. And then we are curious about this dolphin society, and then it doesn't really develop beyond that point.
Yeah, I mean, we were waiting for a man on dolphin scene, but didn't happen.
Careful. Family show.
Anyway, so yeah, that's 5 issues of Kamandi. We're through 23 now, and I guess if we're going to include the 3 that Kirby drew but didn't write, we'll get up to issue 40. So
yeah, but like so far, I mean, I was on a high after I finished this issue, even though I didn't, it tailed off a bit for me. But I was thinking, these just get better and better and better. This is fantastic. And I kept reading. I was like, oh no, it went wrong. And yeah, we see here the tease is, yo, don't move, the exorcism.
Yeah, you'll see it in the next issue, and you may believe it, the exorcism.
I don't believe it, Jack. I don't. You can't do magic. You don't seem to like it. I don't know why. You seem allergic to it. I don't know what's going on with you, but yeah. That's what happens.
Kamandi by Jack Kirby is published by DC. It's DCP In Touch, where we hear from our listeners. This week's comments were left on our blog at deconstructingcomics.com. Don commented on episode 770, part 2 of our Kamandi discussion. He says, I am really enjoying the Kirby podcasts. I was more of a Karl Barks, Don Rosa, Calvin and Hobbes, and classic comic strips reader growing up. Most of my superhero comics experience came from my friend in the 90s McFarlane Spider-Man and his complete collection of Valiant comics. So when I first learned of Kirby and recognized I had seen his influence everywhere, I started looking at his work and dynamic panels. Learning a lot here. Great conversation to listen to as always. Thanks, Don. Under the pen name Don Ahay, Don is a cartoonist himself, including Bran Bionic the Sable Peril, which Adam and I talked about in Critiquing Comics 216 a year ago. Don was nice enough to make a little drawing based on a Kirby panel from Kamandi issue 1, promoting our ongoing discussion of that series. I'll include it in the show notes. Paul Spence commented on episode 758 about Kate Beaton's graphic novel Ducks. He says, "Thanks, gentlemen, for an informative discussion of Ducks. Like you, I knew Kate Beaton for Hark a Vagrant, and I was not aware that she had put something like this together. I bought a digital version of the book from the Kobo site after I listened to your podcast. I knew that I had to read this after you had explored its themes and ideas. It seems like this is a major step forward in terms of Beaton's evolution as an artist and writer. I want to thank the team at Deconstructing Comics for analyzing books like this. There are too many podcasts that focus on formulaic Big Two superhero comics, and I find that material boring. Books like Ducks are much more in my wheelhouse." Thanks, Paul. Everyone else, remember that you have numerous ways you can contact us. We have a YouTube channel where our episodes are automatically published as videos by our podcast hosts, and you can leave comments there, on our blog at deconstructingcomics.com, via Twitter at deconcomics, through our Facebook page or group, and of course at mail at deconstructingcomics.com. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. Next week we go straight into part 4 of our discussion of Jack Kirby's Kamandi, in which we follow the last boy on Earth into the dominion of the devils. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.